Hello friends, I'm Jill Williams. Welcome to the Think Like a Painter podcast, where we'll have weekly discussions about living life as a painter, how we're different, and the mindsets we need to become better artists. I'm a professional artist, watercolorist, and instructor who's passionate about the creative process and helping others to achieve their artistic goals. I've devoted most of my life to art as a painter. I've even worked as a muralist, stained glass artist, illustrator, graphic designer, and even professional picture framer on my journey to discovering my creative voice. I have over 2 decades of experience in the creative trenches to share with you in hopes that you'll be informed, inspired, motivated, and most importantly, that you'll learn more about yourself as an artist and how to expand your own creative potential. If you're looking for your tribe of painters, regardless of skill level, I encourage you to join me each week to learn how you can think like a painter. Well, hey, good morning, folks. It's Friday. Thank you for being here. This is Think Like a Painter. I'm Jill Williams. Thanks for joining me. Today, I've got something kind of special that I want to share with you. It's actually an experience that I had just recently when I attended a Georgia O'Keeffe exhibition at the High Museum in Atlanta. I attended with a good friend and fellow painter, Pam Tuggle. Many of you out there may know who she is. Thanks again, Pam, for such a wonderful afternoon. You and your daughter just showed us such a good time, and we had just a lovely afternoon. It was perfect. And you and I have talked about these things, but I wanted to share some things today with the audience because I think that a lot of times we get this idea, or we get a lot of ideas about, you know, what painting is supposed to be about and what we should be doing as painters, and a lot of times we will deviate from our own thoughts and feelings and ideas about what seems right to us because we are listening to maybe too many voices out there, or that type of thing, and we wind up sort of just sort of deviating from what's naturally ours. And we don't have to do that, and that's what we're going to talk about today. I learned this from Georgia O'Keeffe. So I know that Georgia has been gone for several years now, but isn't it wonderful to think that your work, as an artist, what you might leave behind can ultimately encourage somebody or send a message to them or communicate something meaningful to them in a way that, that never would have happened otherwise. And that's exactly what happened to me, when I had a chance to go look at the work that we saw just a few days ago. So, hello, folks. Come on in. So good to see you. So here's what happened. When we got to the museum, the actual exhibition that they have of Georgia O'Keeffe's work at the High in Atlanta right now is actually her New York series. It's not her Southwest paintings, although they had maybe a couple of things in there to feature her Southwest style. But I had no idea that she had created this body of work, from living in New York. And in fact, she calls the series My New Yorks. Yes, with an S on the end, My New Yorks. And it was, I had no idea what to expect, once I realized that that's what was going to be there. And one of the things that I found so interesting was that, it resonated with me because I've had a similar experience recently going out west and handling scale and big sky and all these different things, and the way that it impacted my ability to view and create work. She was dealing with something very similar, and it was the height of the buildings, the skyscrapers. If you realize sort of her timeline, she had been in the Southwest painting, had fallen in love with the Southwest, and then had moved to New York with her husband at the time. And this was the mid latter half of the 20s. And they actually lived in New York for about a decade. And so while she's there, she and her husband both are talking about all the adjustments that they had to make, the husband being a photographer. And the scale of the buildings, they had experienced big sky out west and all of that type of scale and distance and, perspective, out at a distance, in terms of a horizontal landscape looking out toward the horizon line. But in New York, the buildings were up. It was this vertical scale. It was this vertical perspective that was just kind of mind-blowing for the both of them. And as you're going through the exhibition and looking at the work that was created, which I'm going to show you a couple of pieces, you can see the problem solving that they went through, and even comments were made on the little placards, where Georgia and her husband both talked about learning how to adapt to this vertical scale. And how do I interpret this? What is it that I'm supposed to do to make this become a photograph or a painting? And one of the ways that Georgia handled it, and I'm going to show this to you right now. Let me get both of these up here so that you can see. So this is one of her paintings, one of the first ones that caught my eye. And this is why it's so important to go see the work in person. This painting is massive, okay? It's practically 7 foot tall by 4 foot wide, a little bit more than that in each direction, but still, it's like the size of a sheet of plywood. It's massive in terms of a painting. And here's what struck me about this. It does have sort of that deco style, which was kind of going on, at that time period, especially in New York. But look how she handles this upward perspective. It's really skewed. It's kind of leaning. It's disorienting. It's all of those things that you feel if you ever have been to, downtown New York, Manhattan, some big city like that for the first time, and seeing the staggering height of these buildings. And it is kind of a dizzying sort of effect on you. Visually, your brain is trying to figure out what you're actually looking at, right? And so, in all of her, her paintings of the buildings that she did from, standing at ground level and looking up, they all have this really skewed, wonky sort of perspective that kind of keys in on that disorienting feel. And another thing, I don't know if I can zoom in. Let me see if I can get this painting just by itself. Okay, it's not going to be any larger, but let me try to just talk about it. So that was the first thing that caught me, was that she was also handling, struggling with handling a new space, a new type of perspective that she had not seen. That resonated with me, and I loved her vulnerability in it. She didn't say, well, I'm Georgia O'Keeffe and I didn't have any problems with this at all. No, she said, I am trying to figure out how to interpret what I'm seeing, and it's going to take a while. And I loved that honesty, and it just sort of confirmed what I had already been experiencing in my trips out west, and what many of you, if you've been to a new environment, just trying to adapt. It's a big deal, and the thing is, it's okay. Okay, there's nothing wrong with us as painters if we're struggling with a new environment. We've got to figure it out, right? We've got to figure out what's going on. And then here was the second thing that that sort of attracted me with this particular painting. Go online. The name of this painting is Manhattan by Georgia O'Keeffe. Okay, you can go look it up. I encourage you to after the broadcast. So if you'll notice, there are those Southwest flowers that Georgia O'Keeffe is pretty well known for. She has placed 3 of those in this painting in various positions that they sort of makes a triad. There's 3 of them that sort of make this triangular visual connection. You can kind of connect the dots with those 3 flowers. And I was looking at that and thinking to myself, well, that's interesting that she put that in there. And it was just, you listen to people interpret art, and they come up with all of these crazy things, these super deep things that the artist was thinking. And if you've ever read any of those and kind of giggled a little bit, you would know that this is probably true for this, and I think it is. She just put them in there because she wanted to. As I was looking at it, I sort of formed in my own mind just these thoughts about why the flowers might be there. And I know that compositionally, they really add interest visually in making that 3-point sort of little connection. But also, they're soft and they present a nice contrast to this bold, linear, hard, skyscape of this, skyscraper, metal, steel, glass. And then here are these soft flowers. And so there was just that sort of connection too. And then it occurred to me, I thought, maybe she just wanted to do that because she loves flowers. She was a little bit homesick for the desert, and why not just stick them in there, if she wanted to. And then I went and read the placard, and it basically talked about all those things that I had kind of been thinking about in my mind when I was looking at the painting. And that was an encouragement to me that I could sort of see her line of thinking, just by looking at the painting. As a painter myself, having had similar experiences of being in a different location and adapting to that location, and just thinking, I loved the idea that she just put the flowers in there because she just wanted to. There didn't have to be some reason for it other than she just wanted to. That's just the visual expression she felt like doing. And it caused me to also think, how many times have I maybe felt like I wanted to include something in a painting, or maybe I wanted to do a certain type of painting, I wanted to do a certain subject, and instantly this sort of negative, critical voice comes into mind and says, you shouldn't paint that. That doesn't even, why would you paint that? That doesn't even make sense. That's silly to paint that. Right after I had just got through having the feeling, I would really like to paint that. And seeing Georgia put these flowers into this, skyscraper scene just absolutely totally encouraged me that yes, I can just paint something because I want to, and I hope that encourages you too. And I love that I can get that message from her even after all this time that the painting was done. I think it was painted in 1937, and it still has wisdom to share. It still has things to speak to us as artists. And I just was blown away by that. It was just such a comforting thought. And I wanted to be able to share that with you. There's a second painting that I want to share too. But before I get into it, let me get in here and just see if I've got any questions from anybody. Or as we're going, definitely comment. Let me hear from you to know that this is resonating with you, especially the part about, yes, Nancy Doppler says, we can be rule breakers. Yes, absolutely. And you can paint whatever you want to. If it pops up, if it wells up in you, that is absolutely on purpose and is your path. That is your compass, not the critical voice that comes along and says, well, that you shouldn't think about painting things like that. You've moved on from that subject matter, or well, that doesn't make sense. People are going to wonder why you painted that or why you added that. Evelyn says, I was pondering this very issue on my morning walk: fear, uncertainty, doubt. Yes, all of these things, we as artists really have a pretty darn good internal compass, okay? We know what we want to paint. We know what is resonating with us. We know what's appealing to us, what's calling to us. And so that's the thing that we paint, okay? And it's okay. It's always going to be okay. And don't let another voice, even your own or some other critical voice, tell you that you shouldn't do that. I think that, seeing this first painting, the Manhattan, it really blew me away. It's a beautiful composition. You can see her pencil work in there where she drew everything out. She was obviously making straight line against a ruler. You can see her pigments, all of her brush strokes. And it's interesting. It's my guess. Just see, this is why you need to go see it up close in person. Study the brushwork. Study what people's hands have created. It tells you things that you need to know as a painter. I'm guessing, this is a big guess. I'm not an art historian, but studying this painting, the straight lines are impeccable. And I don't detect anything that would indicate to me that she used any kind of tape or masking or anything to achieve these straight lines. She just went in there and did the work. And there's a softness of the pigment as it approaches a hard line. The pigment is really solid, lots of intentional brushwork, but then as it approaches one of the hard lines, I'm trying to get my hand, if you look at those two parallel black lines that sort of go, up and, vertically along the building, any of the lines that she has done, they soften right at the edge of the line. And I thought, what an interesting way to handle that. She just keeps, it's just fascinating how she just keeps pushing these contrasts of soft and hard, just everywhere. The lines get soft right at the edge, but yet it's this steel structure that's just looming over the landscape, and then these soft flowers. I just love it. I just love it. And it is an oil painting, but yet her oil paints in this painting have a matte finish. So she has worked with some sort of I don't necessarily know that she's worked with a medium, but she's done something. The oil ratio to the pigment is such that it's left us with a sort of a matte satin finish. It's just gorgeous, absolutely beautiful. But after having the experience I did, just resonating with Georgia O'Keeffe in a way that I've never have before. This was my first time seeing her work in person. I was super excited. This was like one of the first paintings that I saw. And she had several more. And then I just have a second one that I want to share with you. Let me see if I can get it up here in the same spot. Let me show it to you in it's the way that it appeared on the wall. Okay, so I walk up to this painting, and at first I'm thinking, just sort of maybe thinking, I'm not sure if I like this. I'm not sure what is going on here. But as I studied it for a while, and by the way, let me just take a second to back up. Anytime I go, this is just a habit that I have. If I've gone to an exhibition, I want to just look at the work and commune with the work for a little bit, just to see what I begin to feel or think or whatever before I go and read the little placard that's on the wall. And oftentimes I will find that, wow, I was resonating in a way that the artist intended. There have been times too where it was like, oh, okay, well, I didn't get that feeling, by looking at this painting, but okay. But it's a fun thing to do, just as a painter. So I'm looking at this painting, while I'm there, and at first I was a little unimpressed, maybe after seeing so many of her beautiful building paintings that she had done. But then I thought, no, let me give this a chance. Let me figure out what I'm looking at here. And so the little glass dish, it's a little kind of a vase type thing. It's actually, I find out later, it's called a compote. And it's got a couple of leaves in it that are just sitting there. It's almost as if she was maybe letting a little clipping of a philodendron, take root or something like that. She just has got it in some water. And then, it's against the backdrop of her window in the hotel where they lived. This was a hotel where you could live long term, and so they were there 10 years. And so that's the East River in Manhattan that she's looking out on. And the little vase is the focal point. Obviously, it has a lot more clarity, color, brilliance, and then everything else is sort of monochromatic, very soft, well in the background, all of that kind of thing. It's just, the backdrop is just the East River and the buildings and the structures that you see out there. And I just thought, I was thinking about it just in terms of me being in my own little space, because she painted in her apartment, or that in their little apartment, their hotel room, for a decade. And after a while, you just kind of paint up all the things you've got, if you're in a small space. You kind of, you're very familiar with your surroundings and what's in there, and you just kind of work with that quite a bit, you know. And so I thought, well, this is what I feel like is happening. She is just, well, I don't know. I feel like painting today, but I don't want to go outside. So here's a vase. I'm going to plop it in the window and I'm just going to paint it. And that's what she came up with. Well, sure enough, I go over there. I look at the placard. Let me pull that up so that you can kind of see that too. It's called Pink Dish with Green Leaves. And it was pastel on board. I do remember that now because there was glass on it. And so she talks about the piece, and she is so vulnerable in her discussion of this. There's some commentary on what it was about the luminous, the luminous still life against the dim cityscape, that type of thing. But I love this line though. Georgia O'Keeffe wrote about this work, and it says this on the placard: "The pink dish with the city is frankly my foolishness, but I thought to myself, I am that way, so here it goes. If I am that way, I might as well put it down." And I thought, oh my gosh, that is so brilliant. So to compare, the Manhattan, I mean, it was just this epic, really statement piece that she just poured her soul into, and just accomplished so much visual communication about her life and her circumstances. And then to come to this little painting with, the little dish, and it's like, this is definitely not a War and Peace novel, but this is just a little dish that she has, and she loves it, and so she painted it just because she wanted to, and she made a whole painting on this little dish. And I was just like, oh my gosh, see, it's really okay. There are going to be those times as painters where the painting, we've really got something that needs to come out. It's going to be this War and Peace novel. We really want it to be this statement. We really want to just go the mile. We want to pour our soul into it. And then other times, we just have a favorite little glass dish, and we're just going to put it up on the windowsill and paint it. And that's okay. Both are relevant and just as adequate as one another at pointing directly back to the painter at what's possible within us as painters and what can come out. And whatever comes out as a painter is working, and it's okay. Even those pieces that we don't care for, even those pieces that we don't like, they're all part of our journey in getting to either that big statement piece or maybe just, hey, I have this glass dish that I like, and so I want to paint it. All of these things work. And so I left the museum that day, and Pam and I talked about this a little bit, just so encouraged at her transparency and her vulnerability as a painter, and that, she's Georgia O'Keeffe, and she just, she never has any problems as a painter, right? She's Georgia O'Keeffe, but no, she's just like us. We're just like her in that we're painters, and we have these thoughts, and we have these processes, and we go through them, and sometimes it's epic, and sometimes it's just very mundane, and then everything in between. And all of these are good, okay? It was really as if Georgia O'Keeffe gave me permission to just stick with the thing, stay with my thoughts, let my internal compass guide me, because it's not going to ever lead me astray in terms of what I want to be working on, or what I want to paint, or what I feel like my new subject is, okay? I hope this is encouraging to you. Let's see. This is interesting. Evelyn just posted, so the dish with the leaves could represent being out of place. It could. It could have. We could start reading those things into it. But part of me, and it's a valid thought, and it could have been done maybe unintentionally, just sort of, we have these things that we do without realizing it, but it really does mean something, even though we didn't mean for it to mean something. But, she just talked about it. Part of me wants to think that it's just the dish, and she had a little clipping in there that she was waiting for it to sprout so she could replant it. and it just happened to, that's just what it happened to look like. But isn't it wonderful to think that, without realizing it, it can also mean that, we could add a lot of meaning to it, just that the vitality to be creative and to do everything she is doing is that green spark of life against this gray, hard cityscape. I mean, there's all kinds of things that we could read into it, but I think with her comment, she says that this was just my foolishness. I just wanted, basically, in other words, I just felt like painting this dish, and so there it is. And I love that. I love that transparency, that vulnerability. Carol says, I'm in a mood to paint still life. This image resonates with me. Absolutely. Absolutely. Let's see. Rosanara says, now, oops, my thing moved here. Now I'm at my canvas watching this important discussion. Yes, absolutely. So as you're there, you've got to think about this. When you're sitting down with your paper, with your canvas, just like anybody before you, whether it was Michelangelo or Georgia O'Keeffe or whoever, okay, that is a sacred space where you are communing with yourself, with what's within you, and with, I feel like, even your creator, and you are doing this thing that is coming out of you and is meant to flow out onto a page, and so, or onto a surface, whatever it may be, whatever it may be. And so when we have those thoughts, those urges of what we want to work on, how dare we immediately shut that down? That's almost like, telling a child to, children can have great ideas, and if you think about it, our artist's self, our artist's child, you're the 6-year-old version of yourself that first loved picking up crayons, that little person is still in there. And so when we have these real spontaneous ideas, or these ideas that bring excitement, that's gold as a painter. Okay, so we're never to try to suppress that or squash that or shove that back down. That is coming to the surface for a reason. It is trying so hard to get out. Okay, and so the last thing we want to do is like slam the door on that. Okay, so we have permission, because Georgia O'Keeffe has given us permission. Okay, we have permission to just respond to these things. Put the flower in the painting because you want to, whatever it is. I mean, it did have some meaning for her. It was, she was missing her flower, she was missing her desert landscape, but she was still enthralled and intrigued by this harsh, hard metal and steel. It was just the way she describes it, on some of the placards, it was just almost like too much visual information. And she would even go on walks without even sketching. She would just go on walks just to kind of like take it all in, and then of course she would go back to her studio space in her room and work on these things. But we can't shut these things down. So you have permission to paint the things that you want to paint, even if they don't make sense, even if they might not be sellable. Oh, isn't that one of the big things that we kind of get hung up in too? Would this sell? Could I sell this at the market? Could, whatever the case may be, if you're out there and you're one of those painters who are far enough along in your journey that you're looking at monetizing some of your ability as a painter, that's a big one, and I'm telling you, I can think back on my early days as a painter when I was, selling nothing, but also I can remember just the absolute joy and excitement and just the thrill of the act of becoming a painter. That was so enough. Okay, and we've got to remember to stay sort of tapped into that. We don't want to ever let go of that. Let me look and see if I've got any more thoughts. Or let's see, Michelle is saying painting is creating how we interpret things in our own creative voice. Too many voices try to disrupt that. Yes, In fact, I just had a brief little message conversation with another painter friend online, Christy Jacobson. Some of you may know her, and we were just talking about the idea that, you know, too many voices, too many opinions. Oh my gosh! Sometimes we need to, you know, put the phone down, not look at and not even look through, you know, what do you call it? Scroll through Instagram and look at the paintings. Just sit down with your own mind and thoughts of what you are wanting to do. Figure out what is trying to well up inside of you, okay? And we need some quiet space to do that. We need the other voices to stop talking, okay, for a little bit. And, you know, there's times where it's fun to go online and scroll and see what other people are doing, get inspired, you know, there's absolutely time for that. But sometimes, especially, you know, when we're needing to just sit down or stand at the easel, whatever it is, and just get the work done, we need to be able to find that sacred space alone and figure out what is trying to come out, okay? Let's see if I got any more questions. I hope that this has been encouraging to you. This was such a great outing with Pam, and it was so much fun. But I hope that you've enjoyed this. I will be sharing some more things, you know, along this line, you know, of the way that we need to be thinking as painters, and the things that we do think about, and the things that are okay for us to think about. I hope you enjoyed this, and I look forward to talking to you next week. So let me hear from you. If you're watching this on replay, let me hear from you. I'd love to hear your thoughts on it, and I will talk to you very soon. And by the way, if you are listening to this on replay and you want to get involved in the conversation, definitely come and join the group, because this podcast is done live. And if you want to get involved, join the group. The instructions for that are in the show notes, in the video's description. And we'd love to have you here, and I will talk to you next time. Thanks so much. Bye.